It is 10 a.m. That is the time scheduled for our work session, Tuesday, July 27th, 2023, in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee, Arizona. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Roll call. District 1.
Crosby District.
District 2.
The English is present.
And District 3. Supervisor Judd is here. We have a full board. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams, computer or mobile app, or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 730-538-457#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. For the purpose of introductions, there may be someone at the table, the sheriff or someone, and I think we're all really familiar, but if we could just quickly mention, hey, this is Sheriff Daniels, and make that comment the first time. You don't have to introduce yourself every time. Okay, so Sharon Gelman, our Deputy County Administrator, has put a lot of work into answering questions from the public, preparing something that will give more information than we had at our last. So this is really a follow-up, specifically about many county shelters, agreements, and projects possible and existing. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so Sharon.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Crosby, Supervisor English. Thank you for letting me have this work session today to share information with the board as well as the public about the progress the county is making on various animal shelter projects, and also to get direction from the board on some of the concerns the public has raised, so that I and the rest of the county can know how to move forward. We're at some critical stages, some decision points are coming, and so we do move that direction. All right, one moment. So I'm going to first provide some context. It's been a long road to this point, and everybody has busy lives. We have lots of other things we're working on, so we might have lost sight of where we have been. I want to talk about where we are now on the various projects and where we're going. And then that's where I'm looking for some direction is, should we start over? So where we have been, ironically, or interestingly enough, it started almost when I started with the county in 2018. One of my first projects was to look into animal shelter operations and how the county can improve what we're doing. That came about because there was an IGA with Huachuca City that was under review and renewal. And the board wanted more information on costs. Huachuca City wanted to negotiate those costs. And so that's how I became involved. We went through that process. We were getting close to, I think we even did approve an IGA. And then in December 2018, Huachuca City Shelter closed due to an electrical fire. And that impacted county animal control operations greatly because the county relied heavily, the sheriff's office in particular, relied heavily on the Huachuca City facility for impounds. We did have contracts, our IGAs with Wilcox and Douglas as well, but Huachuca City being near the population center of Sierra Vista was heavily used. So that forced the county to make some changes and explore partnerships with Sierra Vista and Friends of the Bisbee Animal Shelter. Then in March of 2021, I was approached. Supervisor Judd actually gave me a call and said, hey, this might be a great opportunity for us to work with the Humane Society of Arizona. Steve Farley is now the CEO, and he's expressed interest in branching out beyond Tucson. So this was a kind of an initiative that the public also brought to Supervisor Judd. Around at Jerry Fredberg, we organized a tour with HSSA of for the Toberville Road place in Bisbee, our former juvenile detention facility. They also toured the Bisbee Animal Shelter and I believe the Douglas and Sierra Vista Animal Shelters, although I wasn't a part of that part of the day. After that tour, the group that was involved was very excited about the prospect of partnering with the Humane Society. And we talked about next steps of trying to find funding to remodel the Toberville Road place. So I worked from that point on trying to find out more how this Humane Society partnership would work. Got approval from the board through Resolution 2110 to try to negotiate an agreement for county animal shelter services, so that I then knew that the board wanted me to continue those conversations on into the future. Then in August 2021, the board did approve an agreement for Humane Society to transport animals out of Douglas. And that would have a maximum cost of $32,000. And I presented last time on the numbers for that, and I believe the Humane Society CEO submitted a commitment letter where he also stated those numbers of how many they have transported for the length of that agreement.
And I don't know if you're going to get into that, but some of the debate, and I don't know if you have a breakdown, but I would be interested in seeing that, is that they're really working closely with Douglas and helping all the animals from Douglas. And I guess we're only paying for the county animals, or is it
Correct.
Being muddled?
For the county animals,
Okay.
For what they transport out. So it's, I do have a breakout that I can give you of all the various invoices and what they've been paid. So it goes.
But they're helping.
It varies. It's month to month how much it'll be based on, I believe, Humane Society operations and what they are able to take in at the time, and other factors that I would have to ask Steve Farley to explain to you, and he will be presenting to the board in September on their activities in Cochise County. So that agreement was very supported by the public. I noted that Mary Moran and Jerry Frenberg, who have been very helpful in moving various projects along and care greatly about the treatment of animals in this county, they provided support for it at the time. I know that this project has not gone the way that many would have liked. They would like to see more animals going by the Humane Society. This agreement is up for renewal and will come before the board on August 8th. And at that time, the board can determine if you want to renew that agreement or not. There has been no proposed fee increase, though. April 2021, the counties, then I worked with, through the Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, for the first time in many years, there became an opportunity to request direct funding from Congress for various community projects. This was a new kind of process, and Congresswoman Kirkpatrick's office and Senator Kelly's office were really seeking applications from various local governments and nonprofits to fill out this community funding request. Yes.
Council Osby District 1, Madam Gilman.
Yes.
What happens to that $2 million if it is not utilized within such and such amount of time? Does it disappear or what?
Correct. So as I go through further, that $2 million was lowered through the congressional process to $1.1 million, but the initial request was for $2 million that I put through on the county's behalf. So according to the USDA grant documents, we have 5 years to utilize those funds. And if in that time we have not, starting from the time the letter of conditions was approved in late November, early December of 2022, just this past winter. Another part of the term of conditions is that we have to have significant advancement towards in the project
Mhm.
by the end of this year.
Okay.
And that can be defined loosely what significant advancement is. They don't define what significant is, I should say. So as I work with USDA, I'm trying to nail that down.
Okay, so the 1.1 is on the next page that you're about to show. Okay.
So this was a project that we put forth through Kirkpatrick's office, and there were letters of support. I utilized, Mary Moran had started a petition, an online petition to support this project, and that was greatly appreciated because it really gave us a link that people could see from the Congresswoman's office how much the community cares about this project. And that has continued throughout. I could not do any of this without the public's support and passion for this project. The staff at Kirkpatrick's office anecdotally shared with me that this was such a strong application because of the amount of news articles that I could submit to go with it, the online petition, the letters of support, and that the Humane Society was a partner. So, as everything does, take time in Congress though. March 9th, 2022, 1 year later, after that application was first submitted, is when the omnibus spending bill was passed and the Cochise County Animal Shelter Project was approved for $1.1 million. And it did go down as it went through the appropriations process, primarily because of Bisbee being a population of a certain size. The formula was that it could only qualify for up to $1.1 million. May to June, I was contacted by the USDA. They wanted to understand more about the project because now, yes.
Why would it be based on Bisbee's population instead of the county?
Because the application was specifically for the Toberville Road facility located in Bisbee.
Okay.
So the primary population by their standards was Bisbee,
Okay.
even though we would be transporting animals from around the county.
Uh-huh. So that's just kind of a bureaucratic, funny thing about the way they did business. And it shouldn't really necessarily apply since we're talking about a county project.
Well, I think
In my opinion.
like, well, their grant applications and standards are based on where the location of the facility was.
Okay.
So, then I was contacted by USDA because the funding for that congressional, and it's important that we understand it's a direct funding. This wasn't an application at the point when the USDA got it that they could deny. They were told, give $1.1 million to Cochise County, basically. And now Cochise County fill out these USDA documents and make it work. So it was a little different from the USDA's perspective. They usually review things and make sure that everything checks all their boxes, and here they're being told, it'll check the boxes. You know, this is a direct funding. So it's a grant-ish, you know, is how I say it. By their standards, it's a grant. So I had to submit then a large packet of documents that included budget expectations, operation plans, the county finances that we could support the project, letters of support. It was quite numerous, the number of federal forms to be filled out, and I partnered with Local First Arizona for a free grant writer to assist me with that, who's familiar with the federal processes. In November 29, 2022, the board approved that letter of conditions and grant agreement for USDA Rural Housing Service Grant of $1.1 million. At the same agenda item, the county approved appropriating $1.9 from general fund to the Toberville Road Shelter Project to complete out the budget. That was required as part of the grant application, that any funds necessary beyond what in the budget beyond what the grant would cover would have to be covered by the entity, county.
Crosby, District 1. So what I'm hearing is we could push this out, or it is able to be pushed out until 2027 before we really lose the 1.1.
From 2020. Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
So when 2027 comes up, can we ask for another extension, or do you know?
I think I'd have to review the letters of the conditions, but I believe there is a statement that extensions can be granted if USDA sees that the progress has been significant along the way.
Good.
It's
Which
not,
we will be.
which it will be. It's not that we would be, I doubt we would get an extension if we sat on the money for that long and had done nothing.
Right.
Sharon, about the 1.92 million.
Mhm.
At one point, I believe it was back in 2018, we had designated that, well, even more money than that, I think, 2 million. And through our strategic plan, we had designated money to work on this shelter project.
Oh,
So if
that
you
might have
look
been
back,
before my time. I would
it
have
could
to
have
look
been. But if you look back, and we talked about, where we might build a shelter and what it might look like at some point before this opportunity.
Oh, I
came
know
up.
what you're talking about. Yes.
And so we did have some money kind of set aside because in our strategic plan,
Theoretically.
Theoretically,
theoretically,
It
we
wasn't
didn't
line
want to
item.
put something in the strategic plan that we didn't have money to pay for.
Correct. There were previous work sessions that I didn't allude to because it's
But
quite
it
a
was
process.
never budgeted, but
It
it
wasn't
was
budgeted,
something that we.
But we knew that at that time to build a shelter would take approximately $2 million at that time, and of course, time has changed. Inflation, whatever. So then we submitted everything. Where am I? I have lost my place. So the board approved the letter of conditions for 1.9 and appropriated the funds. That's what happened in November. So again, I want to reiterate that was November 2022 that we actually had all the funding aligned.
So on the next page, we see several divisions of how the money could be divided up. So in the interest of showing the USDA or the grant providers that we are working towards this goal, how do we spend their 1.1 before we spend our 1.9?
That's important to note that the letter of conditions does state that we have to spend our money before we spend theirs. But it is secure money. It is secure money. So new construction of the includes a clinic. This is the budget for Toberville Road project. New construction would include a wellness clinic that would provide vet services for the community at a lower cost. Repurpose space for a juvenile, that's the juvenile center, so that space, the brick building, would be repurposed as the animal shelter. Miscellaneous site work demolition, if necessary. There is a trailer modular building there that the Bisbee City Council currently uses for their meetings. We would leave that there for as long as we could because they need it. The Bisbee's recently, we sold them that visitation site for $1, and they thankfully will be removing it. And so that demolition cost may not be as high as we anticipated. Architect fees. Oh, and we also did the abatement out of another fund. So that abatement that we recently did of the juvenile detention facility will not impact this budget. Architect fees, we estimate at $250,000. That's just a standard appropriate amount based on the size of the overall budget of the project, and then a contingency fund.
What does that mean? What is a contingency fund?
It's the remaining balance and what we can use should other fees not align within the budget.
Okay, so within this, like going back to what I asked about before, how to spend their money before we spend ours, how can you find out how little of our money we could spend without losing the grant?
Mm-hmm.
What I have in mind, if anybody can't figure it out, is pushing it out on a timeline farther, because I don't believe the economy is in good shape.
Mm.
So I could go on, but.
I know.
you can-
I'm thinking about your original question,
Yeah,
which was,
just ask them, hey, how little money can we spend and it's still going towards, we don't want to lose the 1.1.
I would imagine I could submit a revised budget that would lower the amount of what we would, if we were not going to do everything that were listed there. And
Well, we
that's how
might end up doing everything that's listed there, but just not necessarily prior to
the end of the project.
yeah, between now and 2007, or correction, 27. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, well, you can look into that. Ask somebody that will give you a nice answer.
The one we want.
Yeah.
The one answer. So where are we? This is where I stand currently with the project, what we've been working on. We put, since the money was all secured and approved in November, or late November, early December of last year, we had to develop a scope of work that required some consultation with the USDA as well as to what that scope of work would be for architectural design services to make sure that it met with their federal regulations. So in February, we were ready to move forward with that scope, and it's an RFSQ, which stands for Request for Supplier Qualifications. So it's a bit different process than an RFP. In this process, you look for submissions that have the appropriate qualifications for the project that you're looking to do. There is not a discussion of cost at that stage, and this is how across the board governments handle architectural and design services. We have to look for qualifications first. And then when we get down to a discussion of costs, after we select a vendor, if that doesn't, if we can't come to terms on a cost, then we can go out for an RFSQ again or choose a different vendor that submitted before. So it's basically we start talking first to the one with the highest qualification. 2 submissions were received in that open process and reviewed by our internal staff committee. We then selected a vendor and worked on a contract with our county attorney's office for that project. According to the letter of conditions from the USDA, that contract has to be approved first by USDA, and then I will bring it to the board. I submitted that to USDA in July, and just July 13th, and I found out that USDA does have it. They're reviewing it. I hope to have an answer soon so that I can bring it to the board by August. I keep following up to push them along. So I'll talk more about the architect here shortly. The priorities for the new shelter that we've established through that RFSQ are as a facility that fosters adoptions. We believe that adoption services include volunteer programs, foster home programs, outreach on responsible pet ownership. That kind of programming would happen at this location. Disease control and noise control are very important for the health and wellness of the animal. To lower stress and control noise, lowering the noise controls the stress of the animal. And disease control includes the vaccinations as well as education on preventable diseases for proper pet ownership. The wellness clinic will do that kind of vaccinations and provide the low-cost vet care for the community. Minimize facility maintenance and management by having a well-run facility that adheres to shelter design standards can lower our overall maintenance costs. Of course, we're concerned about the safety and security of everyone who interacts with the animals. We want to make sure that and of the animals themselves, we want to make sure that we're providing an environment that people want to come to and that the animals are cared for. And one of those is the use of natural light and fresh air creates a place where people want to stay and visit with the animals and get to know their animal before an adoption if it's a pleasant environment with natural air, light and fresh air. So the architecture company is the chosen vendor at this time that we recommend we would be bringing to the board for a contract approval. Richard Faytom is the principal in charge. He works with consultants from Shelter Planners of America. The qualifications for this company are that they are involved with the Sierra Vista Animal Care expansion, which is a $2 million project. Sierra Vista, they did the Sierra Vista shelter needs assessment and master plan. They worked on PAC, is the Pima Animal Care and Center, and they worked on their remodel in addition. Gila County Animal Care and Control, their new shelter, which was $2.8 million. Humane Society of Sedona, and they built the Humane Society of Southern Arizona location up in Tucson. Project delivery process. This is from the architecture company. They provided this slide. I found it very helpful in our discussions to lay out the process of a typical project delivery for them. The contract coming before the board would be for that step 1 to discuss design concepts and cost estimates. There would not be a master plan in this particular phase. As they described it, it seemed like it might be redundant to us at this stage, but for the project, but they will be reviewing goals and needs and the site and the building and determining what issues exist within that building.
And are they going to include the public? I think that was mentioned in the last meeting.
Yes, so there will be public presentations as well as, they call it a public charrette, where they would present the designs and the members of the public have an opportunity in a community room to say, no, we don't like that. This sounds like a good idea. That looks bad. That looks unnecessary, that kind of thing. They could actually point at the designs and give their opinions. Step 2 is fundraising. In our case, that may not be as essential because we've already secured the funding. Of course, if any passionate people out there want to develop a 501c3 and fundraise on our behalf, we would welcome it. It might lower our general fund costs, but it's not an essential step at this stage for us. Then step 3 will be a separate contract that would come before the board of the schematic design and construction documents, design development, and then we go to construction.
With the same vendor.
For the step 2 and step 3, in my mind it's step 2 because fundraising isn't something the vendor does. Yes, with the same vendor. And there is some discussion right now in the construction phase. USDA requires or prefers for it to be a design build process in the procurement aspect. And while the vendor is understanding of that, they do recommend a construction manager at risk sort of design situation. So I'm trying to understand from USDA if we can take that route instead because it would control costs better. The architecture company also, as I laid out, this is the pre-design phase. They estimate 5 months for that needs assessment, existing facilities survey. I won't paint an unexpected picture. It's a facility that is old and has its own needs to be upgraded to a modern, by modern standards for electrical services. We know it currently doesn't have the capacity to handle the HVAC system that a shelter would require. So, excuse me, so we would need to upgrade the electrical. We know we will need a sprinkler system. Certain fire code standards have changed since that building was in operation. We have had building assessments done and the existing sewer and water services are adequate. So just off the top, we know there's some issues that the architect will have to address in their design, but they will take a deeper dive and let us know what other areas.
And this has to do with a Toveryville facility?
Yes, this is all related to Toverville. This is and the scope of work is strictly for Toverville Road. And the cost on that contract for part 1 is $53,200 to do that work for us. The pace of capital projects. So I want to share I understand there's frustration that this has taken so long and that it continues to take a while, and the estimated time frame is maybe in 2026 that we would actually open this facility. And I understand that sounds like forever away. I just want to give some perspective to the board. Mojave County, they gave initial funding to build a shelter in 2019. Their Board of Supervisors approved $1.9 million. The total pre-construction and construction cost was previously capped at $3.1 million, with a total project budget of $3.5. They just recently broke ground in February after approving the funding in January in 2019. So in February of 2023, they broke ground and they approved additional funding for it not to exceed $5 million for their project. And it's a large facility. It'll have, I believe, at least 40 kennels, but that is a cost that they are struggling with, and that it's a project that has taken time to design and lay out. Sierra Vista Animal Care Center, their expansion, they began discussions on that expansion in 2019. The project, their original dream design exceeded their actual budget, so they've had to cut certain things out of their original plans, and it's currently at a $2 million project level. And they're not getting everything they wanted, but they had to make some hard choices and put some things aside to stay within budget. The Fusion Center with the sheriff, we just purchased that $5 million building with a grant, and that's just a commercial. I put that in there just as a commercial real estate purchase. To give a timeline of that, we searched for a few years, so that added to the process, but it did take 7 months to finalize that sale of a commercial real estate from the county to the seller. So where are we going? What does the future hold for the Toberville Road project? I think I explained we have that project process with the architect. There's the other side of it where Humane Society would be managing and operating the facility. They have their own policies and procedures. They would set a fee for the county to operate that. The lease and management agreement needs to be completed so that can be locked in. I understand they want to see the building done first or see movement on the building before they enter into a lease and management agreement. But I think that's something we can continue to negotiate and get those costs before the board. Continue efforts to expand IGAs with Sierra Vista and Benson. I have reached out, and the sheriff has reached out to Benson. They are interested in working with us on being able to have county animals at the Benson location. That would expand our services, our ability rather to impound animals, not just in Wilcox, but in Benson as well, and the northern side of the county. Sierra Vista, I met with them. They are interested in talking more with us about how we might be able to help with their expansion. Would that be something the board would be interested in doing? As I mentioned, they weren't able to do everything they wanted to do. So could there be a partnership where we help them with their expansion and then we have an IGA with them, because then they would have space for county animals. That's been the issue. They don't have space. We could continue with our market compensation funding for ACOs to improve retention. The sheriff's office has 5 ACOs, I believe 1 vacancy, maybe 2, one vacancy, and they're paid around 16 something an hour, I believe. Yep. So is that an appropriate compensation level? The supervisors, I think, are around $23 an hour. So is that something we need to look at, is how can we improve retention at that for those positions?
What's the turnover rate?
We run a solid 3 steady. There 2 rotate quite a bit.
And just to reiterate, solid 3 for a county of over 6,000 square miles.
I'll just tell you, they work their butts off.
They cannot be everywhere.
No,
They do.
They do.
they care.
That's a good point.
And then I think we need to continue with our public outreach. I really want the public to understand where we are on this project and what the vision was for the project. But if that is not the direction the board wants to go anymore, I need that understand. I need to know that so that then we can, if we shift course, what does that mean? And so that's where I come to, should we start over? The board, Supervisor Crosby, we can absolutely, we haven't spent any money yet from the project budget for the Toverville Road. So we can write a letter to USDA and say, no, thank you anymore.
I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending ask them how long we can postpone and how little we can pay of our own money to maintain the grant in place. And since you seem like you kind of turned the floor over to me, just keep on going. And the overwhelming sentiment that I have seen is in favor of the Whetstone facility. And the last time that we talked about that, you were soliciting, I guess, comments from the sheriff, and I would be interested to know what the sheriff has to say about the Whetstone facility and personnel there in the future. If you care to, I don't expect you to have details about that, but whatever you want to say about it.
Well, and I see all your emails go back and forth. I'm a huge proponent of animals, and in my 11 years, we've conflicted with 2 of our contracted shelters and 1 that wasn't even contracted. So whatever happens with the animals, at the end of the day, they're going to be calling my office upset. I toured the Whetstone facility. She's a very, very nice lady that runs that. But as Sharon pointed out here on our Fusion Center, Border Operations Center, we spent a year and a half trying to find the suitable center that was most efficient and effective. We didn't jump because it's consumers' money that we're using, taxpayers. I will just say this, and I did some looking. There are some facilities out there for the same price that are move-in ready. That would be awesome. And but the bottom line is, I also know that Sharon's worked her butt off, and thank you, Sharon, for everything you're doing on this project. Here's been my stance, Tom, I appreciate you asking. Here's been my stance on this. Whatever you do it right. And I share that with the board members. Whatever you do it right, because I've worked 39 years, and I'll tell you, one thing I've seen in the county is we rely on others to do our business, and that always bothers me because I want to make sure we do it right. Humane Society, I'm not saying anything is bad, don't read that wrong, but whatever we do, let's do it right. Make sure even if we spend a little extra money, we're doing it right. So that's where I come from on this. I don't think the Whetstone facility, put me on the record, bash me later, but it's not a suitable site because it's going to take too much money to get it back where we need to get it. But I think there are suitable sites out there and partnerships that we need to talk about that Sharon's been working on that I think can take this down the road for the right reasons. And I think it's, after almost 4 decades, we're having the right conversation here. So there's a site not far away that's just an amazing site, move-in ready. But again, that's an opinion on my part because it's up to you all because you're the business people on that. So.
Are you in favor of the Benson site? Which site did you have in mind instead of?
I guess the big thing I've said to Sharon on this is, I got 5 ACOs that work their butts off that we don't have a budget to run the shelter. I don't in my office, and I don't think it's even been allocated. So having Humane Society running, which is what has a very respectable reputation, does the county want to own their shelter and then give it out? And what's the best alternative to that? I support what Sharon's doing. I'll put it on the record. But there are other options out there that I don't know if it's been looked at, but this is out of my lane. I just want to make sure that my animal control officers have a serviceable, quality place to take their animals. I will say this in my 11 years, I've seen shelters that are serviceable or quality. And I've got into with their administrations, those local cities, and said, we're not bringing our animals here. But I'm limited. We're a rural county with limited resources. But when I see animals not being taken care of, I'm not going to get my ACOs. My ACOs, I'll just tell you straight up, everybody, they take the dogs and animals home. Because as you say, Peggy, because they're passionate about taking care of animals. Is it right? Probably not. But is it right in the fact of I'd rather take them home, but we'll feed them on our own, than take them to a shelter. They're not going to take care of them properly. So, yeah, I'm passionate about animals. So all I ask is that whatever we do, it's collective, but it's also best for the animals. And so I will.
Well, let me jump in here and say, when we started this discussion years ago about an animal shelter, the idea was that we need to provide one that meets all of the standards. And so, again, that's one of the reasons it's taken a long time, because you have to look for a site. And that took a long time, looking for a site to put it. But let me move to the bottom line here and see if I'm wrong about this. The grant that we got was for a specific location.
Correct.
It was for making sure that we had what we'd never had in the past was vet facilities so that they could take care of animals and provide for the community to come in for services. Now, we've tried to work with Sierra Vista and never gotten any traction. They've always said, nope, we don't have room. And so you back off. And so I guess the public needs to understand that, you can't force somebody to work with you. And if you have places that as you made that term, move in ready, I don't have that knowledge. I don't know if the other two do or not, but it's never been brought to me. The information that comes to me through the emails is the people trying to sell me whetstone. They want us to buy whetstone. They want us to buy whetstone. They want us to buy whetstone because they've got volunteers. But I believe it was over a year ago when, I don't know if you said it, but I think Tom did, that wasn't a place they would that the sheriff's department would recommend. So, we took our eyes off of it. So I'm not sure what, I think the public is just upset because it's taken a long time and they want something done now. And if we want it done right, whetstone, if it were purchased, isn't the right now. It would take a lot of time and going through procurement and, getting it fixed up. So that would be a long-term project. So are you asking us today to consider starting over? Or are you asking us to submit to the fact that we have made a commitment and we're moving forward with the total rebuild?
I guess I'm asking after I present this information, what does the board think is the most prudent direction? The issue with Whetstone, I haven't done an evaluation of the building. I don't know, and the county doesn't know any kind of building inspection or appraisal or anything. We don't know anything, so I can't speak to the facility itself. But just at an operations level, the concern I have is we would not have a partner with the Humane Society. So as the sheriff said, we would have to take ownership of it completely. The sheriff's office would be the designated office to run it. And that's a budget that hasn't been allocated for this year. We would need to discuss how that works, what the sheriff's office would need in staffing and personnel and operations. We don't have policies and procedures because the county has never run a shelter. We can't say how long we would have an animal there. What would be our euthanization policies? How would we handle vaccinations in vet situations? What agreements do we need for a vet or that facility? So there's just a lot of details that we have not explored at all with the sheriff's office on this project. And that's primarily because, as you said, they stated that it's not something that the sheriff's office was initially interested in.
Well, today's the first time I've heard that you feel there are facilities out there
Well,
that are move-in ready.
Yeah, go ahead and explain that, 'cause I have an explanation too.
let me, and again, I'm not trying to detour what Sharon's doing, and maybe this is supplemental to what that's going on, but I'm all about having control of our own destiny. If I mess up, then you can come to me and say, hey, I messed up, or Sharon messed up. We know who owns it at that point instead of relying on others to make our mistakes. I'm just big on that. But let me just throw this at you. I didn't want to present this, but Marsh Development in Chuka City, right there in the main drag, 450 North Huachuca Boulevard. That is a beautiful facility. It's got an office. It's got a fenced-in yard. It's got a warehouse with AC back, insulated. It's 100% move-in ready. And I know the owner very well. Price on that is $549. $549. And so if the approach is to move to our own facility, I'm not saying Sharon's idea. I'm not taking Sharon's. I think Sharon's on the right path. And I want to make that clear. But if the move is the board wants to change facilities, I would detour from going to Whetstone, as Peggy and I toured that and many others. But that place, you move in ready, build your kennels up beside the warehouse, and that's all you have to do. And they have an office for ACO, and they have an ACO in that town of 1,000 people that drives around all day that would be a partner, and I guarantee you. So I just share that out. And I know that Whetstone became the topic of 8,000 emails, and I respect, but I just think we need to look at different options and on that. But based on a budget, and Tom, what you're saying too, based on a budget, I mean, Sharon, you got the right approach where we're at.
Well, and I thank you for giving me credit, but it's not, I didn't do it because I want to, you know.
No, I understand.
This isn't Sharon's project. This is the board gave direction and the community supported it for a great deal of time. So that's why I'm kind of in this situation where I, as a staff member, need to know, do I bring forth a contract for architecture design services? Do I proceed with Toberville, or is the board directing me to do something else?
And if sorry, go ahead.
Go right.
I was just going to say is like when we're focusing, we have this project in place, but if we're switching gears, and just so everyone's expectations, this is not like next week we're going to buy a building that the sheriff mentioned. It's a long process, especially about the planning and engineering or redesigning that building to suit our needs. But you have a project in place with federal funding. And so one of the questions is, do we proceed on that path? And if we do, then we're not proceeding in other venues besides maybe exploring some additional resources with the city of Benson or city of Sierra Vista in the meantime to maybe accept more county animals. Because if we don't have an infinite number of money, and I think Supervisor Crosby, I haven't read through this yet or looked through it, but that is the sense that we can't move on two different projects. We're close to a $3 million project here, and also maybe purchasing a building for $500,000. So I think the first question is, as Sharon laid out, do we still continue down this path? And if the answer is no, okay, then no, then the guidance is, what do we do next? Are we then exploring other options and other buildings? And that's would lead to another work session and more vetting and more tours and planning with the sheriff's office of what that actual cost would be, not excluding the building costs. So I think the first question is, are we still moving down this path of the money that was been allocated us by USDA and moving forward with the architecture? I think that's an important first step. Because if the board's direction is no, we stop there, okay, well now we know a little more guidance of looking at other buildings or exploring other options.
And just to reiterate, those exploring other options, county government doesn't move fast. You know this. I know each of you get frustrated with the pace of county government on projects that you're involved with as well. So I want the public to understand that won't necessarily be as fast as they want it to be either. I wish it could be. I understand where their hearts are coming from. I truly do. I do.
If I may just interject about the building that we just purchased now, 7 months just to close on it. People are not in there actively working right now. We still have to move forward and build. October. So when we talk about the length of time and speed, it's not quick. And Supervisor President, I know you mentioned, your question was, how long can we kind of draw this out for the federal funding? I mean, even you said the anticipated date is 2026. When the doors will be open. So there's still some time there as we progress through these steps of spending money on the architecture and the design and stuff like that. So, but I still think it falls back to the direction from the board of where do we go with this initial concept.
Oh, okay. Well, what this is this is basically the currency tanking and short-term investments being a better interest rate than long-term investments. That's what this is. And it's usually the other way around. That's what we expect historically is the long-term investments are going to pay a higher interest rate. That's what this chart is, and it shows, well, it says what it is. Okay, so what I am in favor of is getting appraisals of the property in Whetstone and compare them to the appraisal, if that is an appraisal that you mentioned with the Marsh facility, and see what's out there. But in my opinion, it's pretty clear that the most ready to move into place is a Whetstone place because they're already doing it. They already got animals there. It doesn't mean it's the greatest place there is, but
That would be a little bit of an expenditure. Is that something that getting to appraisals?
An appraisal is usually put forth to set a price.
right.
I don't think we're
Then we need to
sitting here is concerned about the price. Is what we're buying is what we're looking for. So the appraisal doesn't tell you that.
I still
Well,
would like to tour.
It just tells you the price.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'm not promoting for this. There's nothing in my pocket I get out of this, but I was looking for efficiency and effectiveness, and if you look at pretty much the same price, and I agree with Rich. I mean, whether you're going to ban the other one or not, because if you go right, it gives you an idea, but look at that and look what we looked at, and for the same price, I would think would be.
well, I would say I haven't seen it at all.
I know. I'm just saying.
And we don't know that is it for sale right now?
Yes.
Okay. So is the other place. We haven't got, in other words, just to make up figures, if $200,000 that we get saved going into one versus the other, then that would be money that we could potentially spend on upgrades and make it
And I think
more
Sharon,
functional.
and in respect, I think Sharon makes a good comment. Oh, by all means, yeah, you might take a look at the pictures.
So you have to go back.
Is the administrative support to run the shelter. The advantage of the one in Wichita City would be a partnership with the city and their ACOs, but kind of gives you an idea what the place looks like. And I'm just gonna.
So you're saying you haven't really spoken to the city, but because it is in the city limits, they might be more likely to partner or to help.
Well, they have an ACO that runs around a town of.
Oh,
like-
they have an ACO in the
Yes.
community.
Yes, they're using Terra Vista right now, but having him right there in town where I don't think they're that busy. I don't want to speak.
So I'm looking, I mean, we're not really up against the wall yet as far as getting the architect in. USDA hasn't even approved them yet.
True.
So we have a little bit of time, maybe like a month.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. That would give us time can we reconvene like right where we are this
What are we
second?
reconvening on? Exactly.
After we tour that facility?
But to understand, even that whole process will probably take another year.
Okay.
And we're already in this process set until we're enrolled. So I think the direction is, do we stop? Are we stopping here and saying, nope, the plan, the money, let's send the letter to the USDA saying, thanks, but no thanks, and let's start exploring other buildings? Are we at that?
I'm not saying that.
No, 'cause we
I've never said that. I've never said turn the money back. I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not
But
Look
the
at what
money
else
was
there is.
specifically for this project.
I
That's
understand
what
that.
Yeah,
we're,
so
And I'm
we'll
not saying
not with
don't-
1.8.
it's not for Whetstone
I
or
understand that.
Sierra Vista or.
I understand that,
So,
ma'am.
so can I clarify? Again, it's not about what I want.
Because I know that's why we're struggling over here.
I will do as you direct. I'll continue working with USDA to do to work on the funding and the architect and with procurement and the contract and all that for the architect services. In the meantime, is it the board's direction that you want more information from the sheriff's office on an operation that they would like to embark on? Because I believe that if you're going to go in that direction, the sheriff's office has to be essentially implementing a new project for their office. And that should not come from county administration. That should be owned and completely created by the sheriff's office.
Because right now for Toryville, we have a commitment
have a
from
partner. So-
HSSA that they will operate it for us.
Correct. But now you're moving in a direction where the sheriff's office takes ownership of something, and that needs to come from the sheriff's office as to what they need and what they want. Sorry, but that's how I see it.
And I look at it I look at it as a shared partnership there. Everything we do is shared because we're only the tenants. You are the landlords. But, and I'll just say this, and I've said at the beginning, I want to reemphasize something. If you got something that's efficiently and effective already in place, because for us to run it and own it, we're going to have some more additional funds.
Mhm.
Additional funds on the outside to purchase it. And I'll be honest with you, I have not got in the business of looking for a shelter because this has been you all's, besides input from us to make sure we're the consumers of this shelter. So yeah, whatever you want to do. I mean,
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
but if you're looking to explore other buildings, but if that's what the board direction is, it's not only just the building. You're talking about what the additional budget, manpower, costs would be for the sheriffs to run that facility. Because, as he mentioned, you have 5, and these are people out in the field. These aren't people sitting at a shelter running a shelter. So that's additional cost, additional funding that we haven't budgeted for. But is that something the board wants to explore?
Can explore it. This is the first time I've heard the sheriff mention that he was willing to do anything like that.
the reason I say that, and I'm not here as the primary thought author of that, but the reason, and the chief and I have many, many conversations on this, but is whatever we do it right. And that's the only thing I can say. If this is the most efficient, effective way is what you have already in place with Sharon. And that's why I applauded you on that. But if that's not acceptable to you 3 and you say, hey, I want to go a different route, then by all means, we're going to jump in this with both feet. And then we've had a project out there. We will give you adequate proposals and what's out there. And just like we did with Rich and Sharon on the other Fusion Center and the many other projects we've done. So we're getting pretty polished on that, but there will be an extra cost. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I love Sharon's project as well. I've been on.
Please don't feel like it's Sharon's business.
Okay, I love our project. I love her initial project. I think that it was very generous. The 1.1 million, I mean, you asked for 2, but the 1.1 million is generous, a generous give. I know the sheriff gets grants all the time, and we don't look that, we don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. We want to use it. But then again, there's still 1.8 million or 1.1 million that we have of our own funding. 1.9 million we have of our own money. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not a possibility to kind of switch gears, but it would have to do it now. We'd have to do it, like you said, in the next 2 weeks or month. So, and like I said, can we just reconvene this meeting right where we are? You don't have to go through everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we have time to think about it, and I can look at, maybe the sheriff can talk to you and not make it his project. It would still be the board's project. We would still be responsible.
So, I mean, I think I would need a
I
lot
wanna
more
see.
information from the sheriff's office as to the budget.
I see
they
what
would
you're
need.
asking, and
Yeah.
so does he. He's nodding.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's nodding because he wants to or nodding because what do I do?
It's an extra burden on the sheriff's office, no doubt. We're part of the executive side of our animal controls. We enforce the rules, safeguard the animals, but we don't run shelters like Sharon's noted, and that's true. So we have to look at that, redevelop some programs and policies. But if it fails, I will just say this: I own it.
But
I
if
mean-
we did, well, we would own it too.
And if I know, but if it succeeds, we
If
don't.
it's in the city limits, it gives me a little bit more hope that it would be accessible to, other, partners. The city and your ACO at least would be more located there. Now, let me say, Benson is able to take animals, not tons, but, kind of keep them local.
And
in
there
that
have been
area.
some discussions. They are very interested. They're very cooperative. I'll put it
So
that way.
for me, that was the big yes exclamation point with the heart at the bottom. I felt better about about the pressure, that like released a pressure valve, because we were just concerned with all the animals coming this way. And that might be a partnership that goes well into the future. So I'm excited about that. And so I'm not feeling anxious. I just would like to have a minute to think about it.
Absolutely.
But you've done such good work. Okay, so on our shelter project, you've done such good work, and I'm excited about it. Today, we had enough information to say, look, it really is happening. It really is moving. We really have the right purpose and the right goal. So as far as management of that project, thank you.
You're welcome.
A statement that
Make a statement.
It's a learning experience.
One of the reasons the
but, yeah.
public has bombarded us in the past and continues to is the Douglas shelter.
Mhm.
So when we're moving farther away from the Douglas animals, which seems to be everybody's bugaboo, that they're not taking care of them, they're euthanizing, etc. That was one of the strong reasons for selecting Bisbee. So let's not forget that.
Mhm. I would second that, though. That idea.
And I reiterate the clinic aspect is a big reason for the higher budget on the Bisbee project is because there would be that clinic, and the Humane Society would operate that clinic with their vets that they have, they'd have a mobile vet, they'd have different ideas on how they would handle that, and that can come up for more discussion, but that's part of the management agreement that we would lay out, so it wouldn't be the county hiring veterinarians or anything, but that aspect would be changed in other operations.
So what I understand is my colleagues are not interested in getting an appraisal for the Whetstone shelter project.
I agree. It would look more like not an appraisal, an actual appraisal, but it would look more like an inspection and kind of a plan if we did buy it, what would our cost?
So you're not in favor of getting
Nope.
an appraisal? Okay.
But would you want a building inspection or something like that? Is that something we can even do?
I was going to say, can you go onto a private property and say we want to inspect your building?
That sounds weird.
I don't think so.
Now it is for
We
sale.
could, yeah.
But usually inspections and conditions are after you sign an agreement.
Oh,
That
yeah.
money, like if someone has a house for sale, I can't just walk in and be like, hey, I'm going to have an inspector come in
Yeah,
here
let me
tomorrow.
look.
Sound good?
For sale, you
You'd
can't.
be like, no.
You have to wait after the
For
contract.
sale, you can't.
Tom,
Usually it's after the contract.
I
I
can do
still
that.
want a minute. I want a little minute to look at that.
Get permission.
I want to investigate,
They want money and dirt.
HSSA, I want to thank Steve for giving us this because this really helped today, having that agreement today. But,
So you want to set another
so could
meeting?
we
when?
have it's almost like we're tabling it. So,
We're in a work session.
oh, we can't table a work?
No.
Okay, well, 2 weeks is fine. That should give us enough.
And that's going to be another work
So-
session, or do you expect
Can I
a?
ask for a little more
Can it be-
time than that?
2 weeks for what? I'm sorry. That's a short time to,
What do you
What-
want?
it seems like a big
Just-
plan you want.
I did just to look,
Okay,
to
so-
see that facility.
Oh, that's
And then come back and have a discussion about
Yeah.
it?
But she's not asking you to do anything
Okay.
more.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything more. We just want
Yeah.
to see
I
it.
just didn't know if you were looking for any kind of budget projections or anything.
I would still say that needs to be a partnership because, again, sheriffs don't buy buildings, tenants, but I would say we can work a partnership on that, Sharon.
Do you need a month if we're going to do anything more?
I've done some looking based on previous conversation a couple weeks ago. There's not a lot out there. I'll tell you, it took us a year to find what we did with that one. There's just not a lot. There's a lot of commercial buildings, but they're restaurants. To find a warehouse in the position it's in is tough to
With
do.
AC and all that?
That's what I mean. So, there's a couple, but not a lot. So I can get a realtor that we trusted, that we worked in the past, and say, hey, help us, take us a couple tours and set that up maybe next couple weeks. But
And we could do that the same way we did before, where we divided up the board and
Yeah.
anyone who's interested can go see it.
I'll reach out to one of the realtors to show the love and see if they can set that up.
Go see it. I really think
Work.
2 weeks of work, unless you want to wait a month, or if the sheriff feels.
If the subject's just about the various facilities the sheriff's mentioned, or the one facility the sheriff's mentioned, then.
And then specifically, let's just schedule it for after, I mean, it's not going to be a really long meeting. So schedule it after the next board meeting or, fit it in to that regular day.
I think it's the 27th.
Well, the 8th is the next
The
meeting.
8th.
The 8th is next meeting?
Mhm.
That's,
That's less than 2 weeks.
I think so.
well, what's,
No,
That's less than 2 weeks.
less than 2 weeks. So
So then it would be the 22nd.
22nd?
22nd, okay.
we got things on the 8th. The 8th we got.
No, it's not. The 22nd is just
Let me look at
it's
the
not a board
22nd.
meeting. So the 29th is a board meeting. I know because I'll be gone.
So you have the special.
Looking at the calendar of other things happening that day.
I tried to fix
It's a
it,
special meeting to approve demands on the
and we don't
22nd.
usually attend that.
But you have a work session prior and then CSA presentation.
Oh,
in the
so we are there. So
So
could we
you are
just
around.
make it that morning?
August 22nd.
It would have to be at like 8:30 in the morning.
Because we have a special session in the, or
So that's a lot, but
that is.
whatever the board would like to do. We could look at another day too, if you want to give me time.
Okay,
to
the
look at a
demands
calendar.
are at 10. The demands are at 10. And what time is CSA meeting us?
11,
So we will have time in between
10:30.
10:30.
You can
I'm okay with that, putting it in between. And it won't take long. You can probably do it demands at 10 and this at 10:10 and we'll be done by 10:30. But we'll say 10:30 just to be fair. We'll be hanging around anyway. Thank you.
I have one more question, and
Yeah.
that is the 1.9 million that is the county's share of the proposed 3 million.
Mhm.
Is that set aside, or is that going to dip into that when the time comes, or how is that?
It's set aside because the board approved the transfer from
Okay.
contingency into a
certain
fund. Yeah,
Okay,
so
So it's not ARPA funding?
no, it's general fund contingency money that was moved.
Thank you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions around the table here? I feel like that we're ready to look at it and talk and think about it and come back. And thank you very much.
Next meeting?
It's always written on something. Next meeting will be August 8th at 10 a.m. in Board Supervisors Hearing Room for a regular board meeting. So we'll see you on August 8th.